What do you say, everybody? It's Mick Gillespie, and you are watching and you are listening to Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel. We are over 50,000 subscribers and growing, and we appreciate all of you guys that are already part of our team. But if you're not, it's easy and it's free. All you got to do is subscribe, schedule us when we've got shows lined up like this. Every Sunday night, we get on here and talk about Alabama. Normally football, but right now basketball in full swing with Alabama setting up a matchup to go to the Sweet 16 Monday night against Maryland. We've also got spring practice. I'm thinking fall. I'm ready for football. Spring practice, though, started on Friday. The 8A game, the spring game, is on April 17th. We'll have coverage with that all the way through. So on our show today, we've got Brian Passing from the Crimson Tide Sports Network. He's in Indianapolis right now covering Alabama as they beat Rick Pitino and Iona, and then they set up that big matchup on Monday against the Maryland Terrapins. We'll have Tony Tsoukalas on to help us out with football later in the show. Tony is covering the Crimson Tide football team as they get ready to figure out who the new quarterback is going to be, Bryce Young, Paul Tyson, and how are they going to look, losing a lot of players on offense as they try to defend this national championship. As we talk football and basketball today, it's always a pleasure to bring on one of my good buddies, a man that you guys don't know that well as Catfish. I know him as Catfish, but he's a football and Alabama basketball super fan. He's been in broadcasting a long time, and he's my buddy Chad Anderson. And you know him from I shouldn't say you don't know him. You know him from the Bama Insider Tailgate Show. What's up, dude?
Man, I'm good. How are you? What a weekend so far. Crazy, right? All the upsets. And I mean, in a year where it's the first tournament since the pandemic, I mean, did we expect anything less than a 15 winning, a 14 winning, a 13 winning? What was it? 9 double-digit seeds won over the weekend so far. So, March Madness. It's why we all love it and missed it so much last year.
Yeah, you and I both love to put a little money down. I mean, you probably put a lot more than I do, but I went to Biloxi on Thursday and I put $5 on just about every game. Last weekend we did our bracket show from Pearl River Resort, which, by the way, now that I've been to a bunch of different sports books, got to give those guys a lot of credit. It's a really good sports book up there, and for a lot of different reasons. Biloxi's awesome, though, because you got so many different choices. But for those that are in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, I mean, you can swing over to Pearl River Resort, and you got the kiosk, you got the app, which is something they didn't have in Biloxi. You can bet, as long as you're on their campus from an app. You've got the little crystal terminals where you sit in there and you can bet and pick games and watch them from all over the world, really. And then, of course, you can go up to the counter, but it's fun, man. You were trying to entice me to go to Vegas and do this in the past, but I was always working, and then I got to do it this time. It is sensory overload, though, when you're watching all these games.
And it's kind of like if you bet on the NFL. It's kind of like the noon slate of NFL games where you're just like your head is this the whole time. And if you're a junkie, you have all these different bets laid out because it's more fun that way. That's not the smartest way to bet. Usually the fewer games gives you the better chance to actually beat the house to a certain degree. But when you spread them all out, but that's the fun of March Madness is you're on every game. You got action everywhere. You lose the 11 o'clock game and you're over here slinging money on the 2 o'clock game, chasing it. And then you're slinging on the 5 o'clock game because you're pissed off about the way the 2 o'clock you lost at the buzzer. And there have been some of those already in the tournament. I don't know which games you had or didn't have, but there have been some of those where overtime cost you a total. Eastern Washington hit a layup at the horn to cover against Kansas. There are all kinds of those like last second type bad beats, if you will, or good wins, I guess, whichever side you're on. But nothing like it, man. The first weekend and Vegas is great. I was out there. It's been a while, though, about 13 years ago, 14 years ago, maybe longer than that, when I was there for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. So I got a little bit of a taste, but there's not very many games at that point. So you don't get the same, like you said, sensory overload as you do the first 2 days.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Been a while.
That means you're old, right?
It
Well,
does. Hard to recover these days too, Mick.
yeah, right. Well, I did well. The thing that blew it for me was I had this strategy on one of my tickets. I was going to do heavy favorites because I didn't think that any ones or twos were going to lose, and I just put them all on the money line. And so I put money down, and I thought, okay, well, look, it's all in one building. They're not going to have any fans. It's not like, look at who won all the major sports, right? Bama won football. The Dodgers won baseball. It was all the big favorites, right? So I'm thinking they'll all advance, and I won't make a lot, but I'll do enough. That one's the one I lost. The rest of them, okay. I mean, it's always a toss up, but I'm telling you now that I've gotten this experience. Next basketball season, I'm going to watch a lot more games so that I have more of an insight on what's going on. Because right now I'm just shooting in the dark. I mean, obviously I know Alabama. And that's about it. So let's talk about Alabama, Chad.
Let's do it.
And for those of you that are hanging out with us, thumbs up and subscribe, Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Okay, you were in Nashville for the SEC tournament, and Alabama's been on a run right now. I mean, they won the tournament. They won the regular season before that. They did not look great against Iona, but they won. I'm a little concerned about John Petty's play. That's something that I'm going to bring up when Brian Passing comes on next segment. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, Petty, something's just going on. It looked like, and I don't know that it's a long-term effect, but just yesterday, you watch him, he was wearing his emotions on his sleeve, if you will. Something was off, and he hit his first shot, his first 3-point shot of the game. He hit it early on, and it looked like Alabama was going to jump out and maybe have a chance to create some quick separation from the Gales. Then as the game progressed, it seemed like Petty was forcing some things, and then he started missing some shots, started to force more. He had some turnovers, but where you really noticed it was he couldn't finish on layups. If you remember the one where he went up to the basket, he did make the layup, but he fell awkwardly and ended up behind the goal at one point.
Yeah.
And you could tell Petty was so worried about who was around him because there was a trailing defender coming at him, but he almost missed that shot because he was more worried about that guy than just going up strong and putting his elbows through the basket and slamming it home. And there were a couple of times like that. Alabama missed, how many layups was it yesterday? 12, 13? So it was a ton.
Think about all the turnovers.
And I heard last night an analyst say something like, oh, the game was a lot closer than the score appeared to be, which was a 13-point win for Alabama. But then on the flip side, I go, not really, because Bama played its worst game statistically from the 3-point arc. They missed 12, 13 layups. Again, I don't know the exact number, but it was up to that number during the second half. They turned the ball over more than they do on average throughout the course of the year. So they played a really, really sloppy game and still won by 13. So I look at it as, in the tournament, this isn't style points anymore. Who cares? It's just win, move on. Who's your next opponent? Who's up next? But Petty's got to get his head right, because you could tell, especially at the free throw line, he would miss a shot, and it wasn't just the "aw shucks" or crap or whatever, I missed one, because he's a 76% shooter. It's not like he's 90%. So he's good, but he's not elite at the free throw line. But he was slapping his hands, visibly frustrated on his face, talking to himself. At one point, his teammates actually came and huddled around him before the second free throw, kind of like gave him a hug, talked to him for a second, tried to get his mind right. So you could tell it gradually got worse too during the game, because he just didn't ever visualize the ball going through the hoop. Like, he just never saw it, even on layups that he missed. And sometimes that's the trick. Like, literally just see the ball go through the hoop. In baseball, just see the ball get through the infield. And he didn't do that, or get that, have that bounce, or that fortunate instance, and it just played on his head the entire way. The concern is, in the SEC tournament, he averaged, I think it's 7 points per game. Alabama won the tournament, and he only averaged 7 points a game. So that tells you how good Alabama is, no matter what Petty's doing. But if Petty can get going, this is a Final Four team. So he's got to figure out how to get his head right.
Yeah, I thought he had a horrible game. I'm going to ask Brian Passink about that. He got the hard hat award that they give. It'd be for effort. I think part of that is that Nate Oates knows that he's got to get this guy right, and they're just trying to kill him right now with positivity. And I think that's a great strategy because it's his confidence is just doesn't appear to be there. It's not just the missed threes that aren't even close. It's the they make a play on defense and then he throws the ball down the court like he's playing, in the backyard and somebody and they turn it over. There was the offensive foul. Alabama didn't win that game until they took him out.
Yeah, he was on the bench for quite a few minutes there in the middle of the second half, and I think he came back in when Quinterly got his fourth foul is when Oates made the substitution. But he sat down and Bama did. Now, whether that's coincidence or not, I don't know. But if you look at his stat line, he turned the ball over 4 times. Herbert Jones actually turned it over 5 times yesterday. But what he did on the other side made up for it and shadowed the fact that he turned the ball over more than anyone yesterday. So, again, it was one of those where nothing was going right for Petty, and then it was just piling up and piling up and piling up. And then fans and social media saw it as well and kind of jumped on that. So honestly, hopefully he stays off of Twitter for a day or two and just works on the jump shot, goes to whatever they got set up there in Indianapolis and just works on the form and getting his head straight. Because again, they're going to need him to go Final Four and be a contender. They can win without him, but you're not going to beat Michigan, Gonzaga, Illinois, Baylor, whoever comes out of the other side without Petty being on his A game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he's a difference maker to me. And you got some really good players like Herb Jones, who's been excellent as far as getting to the basket, playing defense. Yep. How about Quinterly? I mean, this guy. How does Villanova let this guy get away? He is so fast.
I look at JQ and I just think this guy must have in the entire season, which was BS, by the way, where he had to sit out because the NCAA wouldn't give him the exemption for having to sit out a year on the transfer. I think he spent the entire year with a Kyra Lewis poster above his bed or something. Because if you watch, at one point I texted a friend of mine during the game, and JQ did this in the SEC tournament. He was the tournament's most valuable player. If he has a crease in a lane, he just takes you one-on-one and beats you every time to the basket. So it got to the point when Alabama was up 5, 6, 7 points. It was like, don't even run the offense. Just let Quinterly take it at the point and drive in and create, because the guy has just become ridiculous in the second half of the season. He struggled a lot of times kind of midway through the year and lost some of that starting spot. Didn't start yesterday, doesn't always start right now, but so good coming off the bench and running the point and the way he's been able to create. He's actually one of Bama's hottest hands. Him and Herbert Jones have really carried the team. And one other guy who was a just freak in the SEC tournament who didn't play as big of a role yesterday, Juwan Gary. That guy has come so far from the beginning of the year to where he is today and creating an even better presence for Alabama down low.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, look, this matchup with Maryland, they're going to have to play better. Maryland's been inconsistent this year. Last year, they were the best team in the Big Ten. They didn't get a chance to play in the tournament. They were a 10 seed, obviously. They played a UConn team that's been very inconsistent as well. Maryland's problem's been trying to get 2 or 3 good games together in a row. Alabama is, I mean, when you look at it, I know they haven't been as dominant as they were at one point in the season, but they're pretty consistent as far as the result goes. I mean, look, they win a ton of games, but I just feel like if Petty doesn't have it, that Alabama probably needs to figure out something else a little bit faster. It felt like they just stuck with Petty so long in that game that it wasn't until the end where he's on the bench and all of a sudden he's not in there to touch the ball to mess things up where they pulled away. I could be wrong, but that's just the way it felt to me. If they play like that, Alabama, against this Terps team, it could be another upset. That's Monday, by the way, at 7:45.
Yeah, I think if you look at Alabama, They win games however is necessary. And that's what makes this team so special, in my opinion. And go back and look through the SEC tournament. They had to grind out a high-scoring game. That was a classic against LSU. Against Tennessee, had to come from behind, really shut down the Vols on defense. I think held them to just, 28 points in the entire second half, which was a phenomenal job on the defensive side. And everybody thinks this Alabama team's the one that scores 80, 90, 100 points in college basketball. And really what's great about this team is they have the ability to really lock down on defense. That's what they did to Tennessee. It's what they've done in other games. They held Auburn to 58 near the end of the regular season, Mississippi State to 59, even though they lost to Missouri 68, LSU to 60 at one point in the year, held Oklahoma on the road to 66, Kentucky to 59, Arkansas to 59, Kentucky to 65. Like, they can win games without having to score 80. And remember last year, Nate Oates, everybody thought, wow, this offense is insane. It's ridiculous. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch, because it was complete opposite of the scoring trends when Anthony Davis and Anthony Grant and Avery Johnson. I was thinking of Kentucky there on my mind. Anthony Grant and Avery Johnson, when they were there, Bama didn't score a lot. And so Nate Oates comes in, Bama scoring.
Hold on a second. And also before them, that was always a problem that Alabama had when Mark Gottfried was the coach as well. They would go on these long scoring droughts.
Yeah, you're right. They'd go on 8 and 9 minute scoring droughts where they'd score 2 points or one field goal, or everything would come from the free throw line. You don't make a field goal shot. And now, last year, when Oates was in his first season, people trying to understand what he was going to do, Bama scoring like crazy, but they couldn't stop anybody. They were giving up a lot of points. This year is just completely different, and that they can win multiple ways. And that's why they're so good and so dangerous. They can play the 65-60 game if they need to. They can also beat you 85-79 if they need to. And when you have that kind of ability to where you can play at multiple paces in a tournament like this, where you're going to get all kinds of different teams that like to run different styles, that's a huge advantage for Alabama to have the players and also the depth that comes off the bench to be able to rotate guys in and out and be able to keep up whichever direction the game is going.
Chad, thanks for jumping on with me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
That's our buddy Chad Anderson. We call him the Catfish, and he's a guy that loves basketball. He was at the arena in Nashville when the Crimson Tide won the SEC, and he's been covering Alabama for a long time. Hey, guys, as you watch, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. Love to have you here on Bama Insider and BamaInsider.com. If you're listening to the podcast right now, give us a 5-star rating. That's a great way to say Roll Tide as we cover Alabama like no one else. Next up on the show is, well, let me tell you this first off. Tony Tsoukalis is going to come on. He's going to help update us on what's going on with Alabama fall football practice. I said fall again. See, I'm ready for fall. Spring football practice with the 8A game coming up. But he's going to jump on with us. But first, we're going to talk with Brian Passink. You know Brian from the Crimson Tide Sports Network. He's a guy who covers Alabama, played at Alabama, and we're going to ask him the tough questions and and see what he says. He's there, and he knows basketball a lot better than we do. It's great to have Brian Passink on from the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Brian, of course, a former Alabama player, and he works with Chris Stewart, bringing the Crimson Tide basketball games to life on radio. He's in Indianapolis, had the call of yesterday's Alabama win over Iona. Brian, how's the experience so far been for you in the bubble?
Well, Indy's been great, and it's always great when you survive and advance in the NCAA tournament. And so far, so good. The teams are in the bubble, and fortunately, they didn't put the radio crew in the bubble. So they actually gave us a little freedom. We could go outside on our own, unlike these players. But the players and coaches are so dialed in to the task at hand and what they're here for. They're watching film, practicing, getting ready. It's all about basketball, and so they played well yesterday. Hopefully, that'll be the case tomorrow against Maryland.
Yeah. So more accurately, you're next to the bubble. not in it unless you go in there to broadcast. Well, let's talk about the game against Iona. It was pretty close, nip and tuck. First off, John Petty had a horrible game, in my opinion. He played hard, Nate Oates said, but, I mean, he's such a big part of Alabama's team. What's it going to take for him to get maybe past the nerves, or does he have some kind of an injury that we just don't know about, and that's kind of hampering his game?
Well, I hate to disagree with you right off the bat here. But no, it always makes for fun radio. Little disagreement here early on. No, I thought I would tweak it. I thought he shot the ball poorly. I thought the areas that I thought he played great. Like, not good, great. He won the hard hat award for that's a big deal in the Alabama locker room after the game, and it's all the effort stats. Mm-hmm. And he was the best on the team in that, and did not shoot the ball well. So that part was obvious. Didn't shoot it well from the free throw line, from the 3-point line, or even around the basket. But to show you how far John Petty's come as a basketball player, if he would have had a game like this his freshman or sophomore year, where really struggled just getting the ball through the net in whatever capacity, he wouldn't have helped you win. Throughout most of that game, I was watching the plus minus that just shows you just overall, who is, but it takes into account what's going on offensively and defensively when you're on the court. And he was by far the leader in plus minus throughout that game until about the last 5 or 6 minutes. And it's because of what he does on the defensive end and what he does from the standpoint of even moving the ball offensively, offensive rebounds, tips, deflections. He was relentless defensively. And he had 10 points and 7 rebounds in a game that some would describe as playing awful.
Yeah, so me. Yeah.
That tells you, man, you got to be a good player to get 10 and 7 in an NCAA tournament game, and in a game where you're struggling. But no, I will give you this: he really did struggle shooting the ball, and for Alabama to stay in this tournament for a lengthy amount of time, John Petty's going to need to get it going, shooting the ball and scoring. He's such an important part of this offense. He's statistically the greatest 3-point shooter in Alabama basketball history, and some of those weren't close yesterday. So hopefully he'll get things going. I think it looked like he was putting some pressure on himself because he knows that this is it. I think there's a pressure that comes with being a senior, and not to say it's even like scared. It's not that type of nerves. It's almost like you want it so bad type of mentality that just puts extra pressure on yourself, and you don't need any more extra pressure when you're in the NCAA tournament. There's enough that goes with that on its own. But John and the rest of the guys played extremely hard. It's why they won the game. Did not play well. The team did not play well offensively, but because of how good they've become on the defensive end, they give themselves a chance to win on that end of the floor. But again, need John Petty to get going offensively, and the rest of this team to play better on the offensive end. And it's going to need to start Monday against a tough Maryland team.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely the key to Alabama beating Maryland and making a run. And I wasn't just talking about the shooting, the turnovers, the offensive fouls, it's just weird stuff. It just seemed like he was just totally out of his game. But then, I hear the post game, and you guys know basketball way better than I do. I'm watching it on a television, and you're sitting there, so it's always refreshing to hear you say, "Hey, look, maybe the shooting wasn't there. Obviously, there were some turnovers, some fouls, but he also had a lot of deflections and great effort." And I think him winning the hard hat award could partly be too that they've got to have him to win. And Nate Oates talked about the positivity and the confidence that he's trying to reinstill in Petty. But aside from him, I thought Quinterly looked like a superstar, and Herb Jones has established himself as a superstar. And those guys kept Alabama from falling behind in that ball game and eventually winning the game. Those are two excellent players.
Yeah, they are. Excuse me. no doubt about it. And they played big in big moments. And Javon Quinterly has been so good off the bench for this team. Was really happy for him that he was able to win the MVP award in the SEC tournament. I thought that could have easily been given to her, but was happy for Javon that he was able to win that award. And he's gotten so much better defensively. He was, a player who you felt like could get you some buckets going to the basket, an improved three-point shooter. From what I saw in practice a year ago, he's really spent time in the gym working on his three-point shot, and he's as good a three-point shooter as Alabama has, and it's a team full of very capable three-point shooters. But his improvement on the defensive end this year has been really impressive. But he and Herb Jones were terrific yesterday, and Herb, you look up and 20-6. He didn't have a spectacular game offensively, but he had 20 points. Just shows these guys mean so much to the program, and Herb is a very deserving SEC Player of the Year, a very deserving All-American in receiving that award is being named third team All-American. He is playing at a high level, and hopefully that'll continue.
He's Brian Passig from the Crimson Tide Sports Network. They're in Indianapolis right now covering Alabama, and he'll be on the call 7:45 on Monday. That's when, honestly, Brian, my two schools go at it again. I think this is the first time they've played since you and I were on the call for a game in Puerto Rico, if you can believe. I just remembered that as we sit here and talk about it. This one means a lot more, though. Alabama is a few coaches removed now from where they were back then, and that was Mark Turgeon's first season at Maryland. Maryland is, to me, a really dangerous number 10 seed, because they have players. They won the Big Ten last year. They're a good team. Now, it's not the same club, but they've been inconsistent. They beat UConn, another inconsistent team, but you would expect that from a 10-7 matchup. Eric Ayala is a great player. Wiggins can ball a little bit. Maryland's dangerous if you play like Alabama did this past game and you're trying to find yourself.
No doubt about it. And listen, these second games for no matter 1-2 seed, doesn't matter. Those are hard games to win because you're playing against a team in Maryland who competed at a very high level in the best conference this season in the country in the Big Ten. So that's going to be a difficult game one way or the other. Now, it wasn't the team that I predicted Alabama would play. I thought it was going to be UConn. With James Bouknight back healthy, UConn has been a much better team with Bouknight on the floor than when he was hurt earlier in the season. I thought they were better than a 7 seed. So I was surprised, not shocked. As you mentioned, the 10-7 a lot of times could go either way. But I was a little surprised that it was Maryland. But what they did in handling James Bouknight and the UConn Huskies was really impressive. So they'll play with a lot of confidence, and they're not obviously going to be in awe of the number 2 seed in Alabama.
Line runners, no, they curl back. Ayala near right side, defended.
Sorry about that, Brian. No, keep going. I'm listening. That was actually Maryland making a bucket, if you could hear that. Kind of slid in there. But, yeah, no, when I look at this Maryland team, I see, that they have guys who could do some damage. But at the same time, I feel like when Alabama's playing defense and towards the end of the game, when Alabama kind of locked down on defense, they, to me, are one of the best teams, maybe the best team in the country. When they're making buckets and attacking the basket and hitting the threes, John Petty's doing his thing, and then all of a sudden they lock you down on defense, they can beat anybody.
Yes, I think Alabama, when the threes are falling and when they're clicking offensively, like we've seen them at times this year, they can beat anybody in the country, Gonzaga included, Baylor included. This team can play with and beat anybody and would have a chance to make a serious run in this tournament. But with that being said, it just hasn't been as consistent lately. Alabama has not put a string of games together where they were really flowing on the offensive end. It's going to be tough against a Maryland team that does a really good job defensively. Mark Turgeon's teams always have, and So Alabama's got a tough one on Monday night against the Maryland Terrapins, but Alabama has the firepower. Need to get John Petty going. Javon Quinterly's playing well. Herb Jones is playing well, although he hasn't shot the three very well at all over the last 3 or 4 games. But with the way they're calling the NCAA tournament, at least the games that I've seen, they're letting them play in a big way. So you got to be physical, got to be strong with the ball. I thought Alabama adjusted to that in the second half. Had 10 turnovers in the first half, and I thought they let the physical nature of the way the game was being officiated affect them in the first 20 minutes. Did a much better job in the second half. Only 4 turnovers in the second half after 10 in the first half. So got to take care of the ball, especially in games when you're not shooting it well. It allowed Iona to stay in the game. Alabama was struggling shooting it, turning it over too much. That's a bad combination offensively, but this team is so good on the defensive end that they're able to somehow gut out wins when the shots aren't falling. But I think moving forward, you're going to have it going on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's talk a little bit about Nate Oates before I let you go. He just seems to me like he's just you would think that he's been through a million of these battles like Rick Pitino. He's got so much confidence. His style of basketball really feels like it's the future of the game. And for whatever reason, I mean, this guy just ice water in his veins when it comes to these big games.
Yeah, it was really interesting matchup between Rick Pitino and Nate Oates, a guy that you go back 30 years and a lot of the things they were saying about Rick Pitino then, they're now saying about Nate Oates because of the style of play. And in 87 with Providence, the 3-point line was brand new. That was the first year of the 3-point line. And not many coaches embraced it the way Rick Pitino did. Now what Nate Oates is doing is next level from a 3-point barrage standpoint. But a lot of similarities, and Nate Oates is as humble a coach as you'll find, but lacks no confidence. I mean, he does not lack in confidence. He's not arrogant in any way. He's very humble, but he believes his teams are always going to win, and he's going to have them prepared no matter if he's playing against Rick Pitino, the number 1 team in the country. He has an incredible amount of confidence, and I think his teams play that way.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A champion already at Alabama and heading towards Maryland, 7:45 on Monday. All right, the last question is Avery Johnson, former Alabama coach, is part of the broadcast crew for TBS or True TV or whatever, the group that's covering the tournament. Have you guys run into him? And, I mean, is there a chance that he could do an Alabama game? How weird would that be?
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Avery, listen, you can love him or not. I'm a big Avery fan. Was when he was here, still am, and love hearing his unique voice and hearing him on doing these games. So I would love to see it. And listen, he's been really complimentary of the job that Nate Oates has done, and I know he has a special interest in rooting for Alabama. And we've texted a few times back and forth over the course of the season, and you just think he's just any old Alabama fan. He's loving the best of these guys, texting, roll tide. Hopefully, they can pull it off in the NCAA tournament. So listen, if he is on the call for one of these Alabama games, he'll try to play it neutral, but he's pulling for these guys, and he's recruited these older players, so he loves to see their success. And love Nate Oates has done an incredible job, deserving of SEC and possibly National Coach of the Year. And I love the fact that Nate Oates gives credit to what was left by Avery Johnson, and that Avery Johnson is so happy for the success of the players that he had, and then the success that Nate Oates has had. It's really a great situation between former and current coach. Yeah, no doubt, and I'm with you, man. I like him a lot, too. He's Brian Pasick from the Crimson Tide Sports Network, Alabama and Maryland, the Terps against the Tide, 7:45 on Monday for a chance to go to the Sweet 16.
A chance to go to the Sweet 16. Great to talk with Brian Passink from the Crimson Tide Sports Network as Alabama gets ready for a chance to go to the Sweet 16. They haven't been there a lot in program history, but what a run it's been so far. And I love Brian and Chris Stewart and the job that they do, and it's awesome to have Brian jump on with us. It's the second straight week we've had him on, and so far so good for the Crimson Tide. But they play against Maryland Monday at 7:45. Let's talk a little bit of football. We're going to do that with our buddy Tony Tsoukalas. He's the beat writer for the Bama Insider site. You can follow his work on Twitter. You can also read it all, BamaInsider.com. Thumbs up and subscribe as you guys hang out. And let's talk Alabama football. Hey, guys, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe as you hang out with us here on Bama Insider, BamaInsider.com, of course, the Alabama rival site. We've talked a lot of basketball. Now we bring on the beat writer for Bama Insider. That's Tony Tsoukalas. Tony, I want to talk spring football with you, but I also want to hear your thoughts on the tournament, which has seen some pretty big upsets. Obviously, Ohio State and Texas beaten as high seeds, or really low seeds, beaten by high seeds. You go backwards, but you guys know what I mean. Your thoughts on the bracket right now, Alabama hanging on to beat Iona, setting up a matchup Monday against Maryland.
Look, a tournament is a one-game season, and Alabama can't look ahead too much, but it's sure shaping up for Alabama to have that deep run. Look, they're going to be able to get to the Elite Eight without playing a single-digit seed. Obviously, you had the Abilene Christian over Texas upset. You also had UCLA over BYU. So the winner of that game will play Alabama, who also got to play a Maryland team instead of a UConn team. So, look, Maryland, it starts with Maryland, right? I mean, you got to beat them as Galen Smith's team. You know, he transferred over there last season. That the way that Maryland played on Saturday, they probably beat the way that Alabama played on Saturday. So Alabama's going to have to shape things up. But if you look at, you know, on paper, Alabama should be positioned to make a pretty deep run in this one.
Well, they get by Monday, and then they're in the Sweet 16, and who knows if they can get Herb Jones shooting again. This team could be really, really tough. It was a grinded-out win over Iona, and that, you know, obviously is a win. That's the way that the basketball tournament works. Now, changing sports, we're all interested in what's going on with Alabama football, and this is one of the rare times where basketball has overshadowed football, but pretty soon football will take center stage. I know you shake your head, but look, I mean, this is the tournament, right? Alabama's going through fall practice right now. Flip that, spring practice. And they've got a quarterback battle going, right? We're expecting that, you know, this will be Bryce's job, but maybe, you know, maybe Paul comes in there. Your thoughts on what's going on so far?
Look, it's weird because if you say it's not going to be a quarterback battle, I think you disrespect Paul Tyson a little bit, but I just don't think it's going to be one. I don't think that's any knock on Paul Tyson either. I just think, you know, Alabama was obviously sold on Bryce Young as the backup last year when he was the only person to take reps behind Mac Jones. And I just think that Bryce is going to get the opportunity to be the starter and he's not going to mess it up. I don't think if it was completely even, I might say it was. I just think that Bryce is heading into the spring with that slight edge, and I just don't see him giving up any ground. I mean, look, Alabama is blessed to have a great quarterback room. Even Jalen Milroe, who's coming in as a freshman, has a lot of talent. So doesn't have any experience really at quarterback, but they have a lot of, you know, talent and ability there. I just don't see Bryce Young giving up this moment. You know, he's a guy that came into Alabama really hyped. You know, we wrote about him last week on the site. He's been kind of it's been a weird mix of where he's been respected and he's been a high recruit. I mean, he's the #1 quarterback in his class, but he's had to prove himself throughout his career being, you know, 6 foot, very light, below 200 pounds. I just think this is like so just the path of Bryce Young's career, right? I mean, he's always had to prove himself, so why not have to prove yourself at Alabama to get the job? But I expect him to do so, and I just think that when you look at Bryce Young, he's just too talented, and he fits Alabama's offense this season because I think they're going to need a more mobile quarterback. The offensive line, there's a lot of talent there as well, but it's got to gel, and I think having a guy that can kind of extend plays in the pocket with his legs could be beneficial if you're trying to get an offensive line to kind of gel at first.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What have we seen so far in practice? I mean, I know they just started on Friday. So I'm sure there's not a whole lot going on, but you only get what is it, like 17 practices or something? So I mean, it's
15,
not 15.
Yeah, well, 15 counting the A-Day, so 14
15.
in A-Day. A-Day, obviously, you get to see a lot more than the other 14, right?
Right. So even less than what I said. So 15 counting the football game. That's a practice football game. What have we seen so far? What are you hearing about the way that things have gone with the new offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, and so many guys that are gone now and, new guys taking over, which is college football?
Yeah, I mean, look, Nick Saban had nice things to say about all the coordinators, especially Bill O'Brien. It's going to be interesting. I mean, like, we don't get to see a lot, especially now with COVID. We only get to see like little snippets that they send, and you kind of judge everything on what Nick Saban says. And so it's really tough to kind of gain anything until you really, I mean, A-Day is going to be that first true look at Alabama's offense. And look, I don't expect Alabama's offense to be totally different. It never really changes that much, but I expect Bill O'Brien to put his own wrinkle on it. And so it'll be interesting to see how he does that and how he uses Bryce Young or Paul Tyson or whatever, because Bill O'Brien's a guy that's had different kind of quarterbacks, multiple styles of quarterbacks. He's worked with Tom Brady, who kind of fits more into that Mac Jones, Paul Tyson style quarterback. And then he's had guys like Deshaun Watson, who kind of fit more into the Bryce Young style. So he's proven he can do it with both. I think when you look at Bill O'Brien, he gets a lot of flack maybe from, fans early on because he got fired from the Texans. But look, he got fired from the Texans because he's not the best general manager. As far as being a quarterback's coach and an offensive mind, he did a pretty good job. He has a really good track record. And fortunately for Alabama, they can't make any trades. So you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. And I think really Bill O'Brien, big Alabama got to steal with him because he's a great offensive mind. And he's going to, get back into being a head coach pretty soon. I just think that Alabama's fortunate to have him in the meantime.
He's Tony Tsoukalas. He's our Bama Insider beat writer. That means he covers football every day. He's at practice when they let us in. He's at all the games, and you can read his work at BamaInsider.com, the Alabama rival site. Thumbs up and subscribe as you guys hang out, and we talk about the spring practice, getting ready for the 8A game and establishing some new faces on offense. Have you heard anything as far as the offensive line? I mean, I'm guessing that Evan Neal would be on the left side of the football this year.
Well, it's going to be interesting. That's a thing to monitor. But the other thing to monitor is, Nick Saban gave out an injury report, and there's going to be a few guys that are going to be limited this spring. Two of them are on the offensive line, one of them being Emil Ekiyor Jr., who is a returning guard. And to me, more importantly, Pierce Quick. Pierce Quick's a guy that was a highly rated recruit that came in, and now he's going to not have the spring, or he's going to be severely limited in the spring. And I think that's a real bummer for Pierce, because I had him as one of the guys that could kind of maybe push through and maybe, push for a starting job. I mean, there's jobs available, and he's a guy that is experienced and could have done that. Who's to say he couldn't do that in the fall, once he gets healthy again? But it's going to be interesting to see how Alabama kind of sorts things out without a full offensive line. I mean, I think you expect Emil Ekiyor to be in the starting lineup. So if he's not in the spring, it probably gives people enough time to get more reps. But then at the same time, does it kind of decrease Alabama's ability to gel as much? I don't know. I think it's kind of early even in the spring to kind of gel. I mean, you still have the fall camp to do all that. So I think this spring is going to be a lot of experimental things. I think you're going to see a lot of different formations across the line, or a lot of different combinations across the line. So I wouldn't read too much into it with some of the injuries, but it'll be interesting to see.
Let's switch over to the defensive side of the football. Pete Golding, was under fire at the beginning of last year. I mean, people really felt like he was over his head, and then all he did was just coach Alabama into having a really good defense. Nick Saban's involved on that side of the football. This year, Alabama's defense should be the rock of the team. I mean, you talk about losing a couple of really good players, but also keeping a lot of good players, and then possibly even adding besides the players who signed with Alabama out of high school, but also maybe even a transfer in Henry To'o from Tennessee. Have we heard anything else, though, from the NCAA as far as this 1-year exemption to be able to transfer? Because I'm sure that's, from what I understand, that's going to depend on whether he comes in and then whether he's there or not. Your feel from these first few practices about this defense?
Yeah, that's it's, as far as I know, it's still up in the air as well, his status on, and whether or not he would join Alabama. The interesting thing with that is, even if Henry Toto comes in, it's still going to be interesting to see how Alabama approaches the Mike linebacker position. That's a thing that Nick Saban didn't really want to answer yet, and he kind of said that that's something that's going to be determined later. But look, Alabama's going to try Christian Harris. They're going to try Shane Lee. They're going to try Jalen Moody, all kind of rotating in, getting some reps at that Mike linebacker position. And remember, that's the position that calls the defense, the really important part of the defense. Henry To'o plays will linebacker for Tennessee. So that if he gets into the mix, it's still another guy that would be, that they would have to, try to find that Mike linebacker. Jalen Moody did well in that last year. Shane Lee started in that position as a freshman. So it's not like Alabama is devoid of options, but it's interesting to see how they'll do that. And then it'll be even more interesting if they're able to add Henry To'o to the mix, because that's just another, depth at that position.
Yeah, no doubt. He almost went to Alabama and picked Tennessee over the Crimson Tide in the recruiting process out of high school. And from what we're understanding, if he's allowed to transfer, he's going to come in and play for Alabama. So it'll be, a second chance for him. We're limited in life right now because of COVID. Thank goodness there's vaccines and, things are starting to get better and open back up. But football practice isn't one of them. I mean, it's really restricted. What kind of access are you guys getting?
Not much. I mean, we get Zoom calls with Saban and the players, and then we get, like little videos that the university sends us. But it's not like normal years where we're able to kind of go in, and even that was a little bit restricted. But, in normal years, you could go in, you could kind of see for your own eyes, watch, I think it was like 15 minutes of practice, 7 minutes of practice sometimes. Even then you can kind of like see things. I mean, look, if somebody was to get injured, and we might not ever know about it now, which is, in the spring, it's not as much of a big deal because a lot of those injuries, kind of are just knocks and they're not going to affect the actual season. But it makes our job a little bit harder, but, it is what it is. I mean, I think everything's a little bit different in the pandemic.
Well, he's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We talked some spring football. Of course, the 8A game itself will be on April 17th. That's when Alabama will have the big scrimmage at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And we'll get a really good look at, because, obviously we'll see it. It'll be on television. Some fans, I'm guessing, is that right? Some fans will be allowed into the stadium to actually watch that?
Yeah, I think the talk is that it's going to be around 25% capacity. So, So that's what to expect, and it will be a paid event. So normally it's free, but since it's going to be limited capacity, it will not be a free event this year. I guess some fans are better than none, right? I mean, it's nice to see the Bryant-Denny packed for the 8A game, and the sad thing is too, Mick, it's like a lot of times this is the one game that people can go to. It's not everyone can afford tickets to the Alabama games or can even get there, and so 8A for a lot of people means a lot. And it's a bummer that, 2 years in a row now, those people that maybe that's their only opportunity to see it might not get that chance. But, it seems like we're turning the corner with this. And so hopefully next year we'll have a full packed out 8A and they'll be back to normal.
Yeah, right. Maybe this is like a sellout, like when Nick Saban first got to
You might get it just because people are so happy to be, back. So,
well, they're saying that Alabama will have full capacity for the regular season. I know that's down the road, but that's one of the first. It's a good sign, and they're one of the first to say, "Hey, we're doing this."
Sure.
So, a really good sign for where we are right now. So he's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie. Catch us both on Monday night for Monday Night Quarterback. We do that every Monday at 6 o'clock, and we'll kind of be like a pregame show for Alabama basketball at 7:45. They take on Maryland. Guys, subscribe. Thumbs up. Subscribe to the Bama Insider channel. 50,000 plus now. We're past that, and we're looking at 100,000, and it's because of you. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget, latest news on Alabama recruiting. You got Andrew Bone. You want to know what's going on with the team? You got Tony Sukaus. Kyle Henderson's our managing editor. We got a lot of stuff going on our Alabama rival sites. A great time to be a subscriber to BamaInsider.com. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll talk.